So she was in, and we go back. She'll be 20 in June. And the other, Franklin and Marshall in Lancaster. It's a good place to be. It's small, it's out of the way, it's problems. And the other ones, busy. The younger one works at North
This one's even worse.
in the management training program. And the oldest goes for the NFL in a dream job. But they make him do things. Like he'll call me and say, this week, he called me on Monday. You know what they're making me do this week? I have to go to California and spend the day with Saquon Barkley and so-and-so for a commercial. He was at the combine, he was at the Super Bowl.
So what? But he works hard.
Travels a lot, loves it.
Oh,
Loves,
so he's a young kid.
he's 25.
So he's,
He can do
yeah,
it.
he can do it because his strength and the interest.
And he's involved in the corporate NFL partnerships. So he works with the big companies. And it's,
You like my answer?
I wouldn't want to see him in this job years from now. But now it's,
It works for him.
says me, no. Teacher, serious girlfriends, but nobody married. Constant. Younger one, younger girlfriend, so just started high school with four. So, hello? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, my son is in sounds like a factory, but he's not in Barrett. He's in home goods. Kitchen, like,
A lot of stuff comes from overseas.
you can't make it here.
He wants to retire a year from now. He married well, so he can retire a year.
Yeah, but I think still, he just wants to, can't stand it.
He lives in Morristown. He just moved, so he goes to Livingston, and that was a half hour, whatever, further west, times two.
If you ever see kitchen stuff, little appliances, you can dash right. That's what I think.
So Kenny, you're in North Shore sitting like 2 weeks from now, or?
Yeah. Right, 29th,
What are those days? It's a week there.
Monday night.
Yes. Normally nice of that.
Yeah, yeah, we'll be there.
Are you members of that?
Remember, we were in Jericho, and now we're in Woodbury.
You travel Jews?
Sort of. And in all honesty, your school is most consistent
once in the, so in the 6.5 years, recently, I had to leave. I couldn't convince anybody else to leave. And I faked it. It wasn't bad. And but at least the people who needed to say Kaddish got to say Kaddish. So,
You could have led in English, not the end of the world.
I led, but there's parts of it that I can say the Hebrew. I don't know what I'm saying. Well, but it's more meaningful to me to say the words in English because they're unpacked. And I go through the Chumash, and I read and it's fascinating how each go-round, you read something, and you see it differently. What was the one the other day about the Torah, the Ten Commandments? You could take it from the way it's translated, that it was written on both sides,
Like front and back.
which was interesting. So, but it makes more sense if it was the back has to be English. Some,
It's not really that.
this morning in the Torah study, the rabbi brought in a bunch of stuff comparing the story of Abraham and Isaac with the story of the golden calf and Moses. Yeah. About them going up for 3 days, and this one for 3 days, and then the coming down, and but then I said, wait a second, for what you can tie it to Purim. And you start looking for parallels in the scriptures, and it's fascinating. To me, the most meaningful part of this is the Torah study. Not the five, the Sefer Torah. Not the other Talmud, that stuff.
I follow him.
But you can,
I don't follow him.
I just follow
I
it,
can follow him.
but I read it in English, so you get something out of it.
and a lot of the English is impactful. When you read it, it's really impactful.
Yeah, and each time you read it, you get something out of it.
Well, this week's Torah portion, you can read the translation out.
Rabbi.
I saw we were short, so I didn't run from my office. Because I had to get some stuff
But you,
done.
you didn't bring friends.
I did not.
Right.
Hi. Just,
We met before, Richard Zeppelin,
Richard
my
and,
wife, he's our sponsor.
really? Need to get a better sponsor.
He's the case.
No. Keeps trying to insult me. And he has license to keep.
So, yeah, we're not. Well,
No. Start teaching.
yeah, we can. We can always interrupt. Or,
Short, you do a short link.
well,
right?
so, yeah, what time is it? It's,
37.
it's, 6:37, okay, 6:35 or whatever, 6:37. So,
42. starts, 42?
No, because Shabbat, we can start, you can start, well,
Say no. Say
you can
no.
start a couple minutes earlier, basically, when you're ending Shabbat.
Well, one may also argue that
The sun
the
goes down,
stars,
but the sky is still light.
Hmm?
The sun goes down, but the sky is still light.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of cool, right, that the rabbi was so sensitive to these different moments in the day of time and how light changes. They made it up.
well,
I mean, they made it up, meaning they made it up based,
Why 3 stars?
oh, why 3 stars?
You see,
But you want to see the contrast?
that's an indication of
It's like witnesses.
It stands
It's
for
not that
darkness.
the 3 stars come out, it's when we can see them.
when Carol was here,
But they're always there,
Yeah.
meaning it's dark. We can only see them in the dark.
when Carol was here,
Whereas the moon, we can see
when
them.
you go out to the parking lot, she had a Subaru. And there was,
5 stars over there. It's true.
so we did it anytime.
That's true.
Wait a minute.
We always have 9
Subaru.
stars.
So is it?
It was the stars. We can go see the stars.
Anybody see the lunar eclipse?
Hmm?
Anybody
The
see
logo.
lunar eclipse?
My wife was excited about it, but I
I don't think she-
was hoping she didn't stay up that late, because it was
Would you
pretty
start
late.
It's like
Say
1 o'clock
something.
in the morning.
Yeah.
So I didn't see the moon.
Excuse me.
No? Oh, really?
I was going to
I couldn't find the moon that night. And
The
then-
stars are always there.
But you couldn't stay
Right.
up.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Right.
So bathroom break, that's why she's
Break.
checking.
Become this-
It happened to be the right time.
Then it got
Did you
paddled.
see the orange?
It happens, right? I know people travel for like a solar eclipse or for these things, and it's overcast. Well,
As I say, bloody hell,
that's,
bloody hell.
that's tough.
Our son drove up to Syracuse, this is White Plains. So he and his oldest daughter went to Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And they got there and,
It was,
he saw a friend from college.
yeah.
That was it.
Make it worthwhile, right? So, I think what we'll do is we can start studying, and then in 15 minutes, if we haven't gotten the minyan, we'll daven mincha as individuals, and then we'll continue the study. Okay? Elliot, can we get you to move closer than the farthest seat away? I mean, I don't want to I'm trying not to take it personally, you know? I showered and everything.
Wet.
Yeah, the Shabbos thing, right?
Sure. So we're gonna be, we're looking at, David, do you get one?
Thank you.
Yeah, so, we're looking at 2, made-up things by the rabbis, according to David. And 2 halachot.
It's catching on.
Hmm?
It's catching on.
No, it is actually weird. I read it recently, a definition, like a character saying that the blessings that go around the Shema. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, we have the Baruch Hu, and we have the beginning of the Amidah, right? We're standing for the Avot that he wrote. And between them, it's called Shema U'Virchoteha. The Shema and her blessings. So the Shema, that's the Shema, which includes the very famous statement and then 3 paragraphs in the Torah that we read. One about, the first one about the Havdalah, loving God. The second, the more challenging one about, in some ways, about kind of communal responsibility, communal morality and behavior. And the third one about Tzitzit, and how they're supposed to remind us to do what's right. So those 3 paragraphs are from the Torah. They're not prayer. They're recitations of pieces of Torah. The blessings that go before and after it, while not connected to the Shema, it's kind of weird, right? That we have the Shema, and thematically, it's not connected at all to what comes before and after, except in that the prayer before, the paragraph before, called the Ahava Rabbah, or
What, in nighttime?
yeah, Ahavat Olam. Yeah, so Ahavat Rabbah or Ahavat Olam, right? Both are about love of God, and Ahavat Rabbah especially is about revelation and Torah. So what better to do after you bless God for giving us revelation and Torah than to say the Shema and study a little Torah, right? So that would make sense, but it's still an interruption in the flow of the themes that go from the Baruch Hu through to the Amidah, right? And so we start with like what theme? Can anybody remember the first theme of prayer when we get to after the Baruch Hu?
Creation.
I think Cantor says these words sometimes. Remember them, right? Okay, so creation, especially about light and darkness and blessing God for creation, right?
Love God,
Hmm?
love God.
And loving God, right? That comes next, absolutely. So, or God's great love for us first, and then our love of God. So, when it comes to God as creator, they had some concerns, sometimes in terms of making sure we didn't say the wrong thing, which we'll see here in one of the kind of just giving a preamble here. So if we're looking here at the first halacha, and then let's see what we notice. So it's in the Hebrew, it's din bracha rishona b'yoser. So it's the rule of or laws for the first blessing of creation, and with it 5 different kind of seifim or sections. So Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam yoser or u'borei choshech, right? Which is most of that first sentence. How does it end? Anybody remember?
Says Shalom, Borei Kol.
Let's say Shalom B'Rei, right? Is everybody familiar with where that comes from? I don't want to skip over it if it's something that's new. It's a verse from it's from a prophet, and they changed the last word. So in the original, in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible, it says, "Osei Shalom uvorei Torah." So, here it says, Tiknu, it was established, Lahaskir, Midat Laila, Bayom. It was fixed or established to mention the attribute of darkness, because it's midah, during the daytime. Okay? which is a whole other thing to get into, right? And so then internally, or introspectively, when we're thinking about prayer and what a person might be thinking when they're dialed in, when they're coming to say let's come to coming shul, and they're going to dial in the morning service, and it's like a Tuesday. What's on their mind? What, their commute. Yeah, right? The cross Bronx. Or sure. Their life, right? What's coming today? What do I have to deal with?
Let's get this done.
Let's get this done and get on the train. It could be any number of things, right? Or something big that's coming up, right? Now, how might you think about that differently if we're thinking about God as two different, as there being two different forces in the world?
But you might say one is, excuse my English, gooder than the other, or not as good as the other, because I'm dealing with a cross Bronx. That's not the good God, but I'm dealing with pleasant things. That's the preferred God.
Yes, right, the God of traffic.
Right.
The God of traffic has no power within the 5 boroughs, it seems.
Just help me get through the day.
So, right, so how am I going to make it through the day could be, right, we're coming with that kind of an approach. So if we're thinking about, you know, God in the wrong way, it could lead us to not just be thinking thoughts that are technically blasphemy, but more importantly, not helping us rise above and find in Okay, so, page 170. Okay, yeah, we'll just take a few minutes to stop quietly, I don't know.
This is the response.
That one's 326. 226. 226.
So if we look at the second teaching, I'm going to read it, and then we're going to actually look at the applicable part in our Siddur, so we can kind of see it, and not just have to imagine it. And then we'll talk about why that is, maybe. So, this next one is Bracha Shniya Ahavat Olam. So the second blessing, which is here is being referred to as Ahavat Olam. But we know that we say Ahavat Olam during Mari, not during Shachri, and that's exactly what it says, the Yeshomrim Ahava Rabbah. And that is from the Ashkenazic source, or the Moshe Isserlis, right? The Kenoagim B'chol Ashkenazim. Some would say, even in the Sephardic world, that you say Ahava Rabbah in the morning, and he's indicating also that that's what our tradition is in the Ashkenazic world, which explains why we see it in our Siddur, right? The Eno Patachet the Baruch. It doesn't open, it doesn't begin with the word Baruch, or with a blessing. I don't know if anyone else has found that curious or confounding. But if we look at the blessing before it, of Yotzer, right, it begins and ends with Baruch. The first word is Baruch, and the last sentence begins with Baruch.
It starts with Lakel Baruch.
Huh?
It's not Baruch.
Well, it is. We'll see. We'll look in a second, okay? But just to finish this, right? It doesn't begin with Baruch, B'nei shehi smucha leverchat yotzer or. So it doesn't begin with Baruch because it is smushed up to. It abuts. It's adjacent, immediately adjacent to the blessing yotzer or, which is what is immediately before, right? And then the other thing is just an extraneous thing. Ve'im hi poteret birkat Torah. You can see here, like just asking the question. Apparently, in the day, people thought that by saying Ahava Rabbah, which is all about revelation in God's in Torah, right? That you could use that as a blessing over the reading of Torah, instead of the ones that we chant when we have an Aliyah. And so he's just saying, if you want to know about that issue, go here. So it's not really of our concern right now, right? So if we pick up the weekday Siddur and open to page 30, you'll see what we're talking about. Right, so we have the Baruch Hu, which is its own thing. And then, what's the first word? After Baruch. Right? When it says the first bracha before Kriyat Shema, the first word is Baruch. It begins with a blessing. Right? We call, in this case, we call it Shem Umalchut. We begin with God's name and God's sovereignty, right? Baruch atah Hashem, Eloheinu melech haolam. So Shem and Malchut. And then we have the paragraphs of Yotzer Or. Now, where does the halacha that we just read say that this blessing ends? What are the final words? Which is it's a little complicated, right? Because when we're looking at the second halacha, it's about Ahava Rabbah, but it says that the final Yotzer HaMeorot. And where's Yotzer HaMeorot here? So everything there is considered the one blessing about creation. Okay? And so, one of the things I like to do, sometimes when teaching this, especially if it's working with kids, or people learning for the first time, is just read those two big paragraphs on page 30. The first one that begins, "You will illumine," and the second one that begins, "Our praiseworthy God." And just identify the phrase or sentence that you connect with the most, that speaks to you the most.
They're all kind of classics. It's how do you find one that's better than the next, because they're all of the same elevation or
Like, what's your favorite
Feeling.
Beatles? It's like, what's your favorite Beatles song?
right.
It's hard to think. It isn't, they're nothing better. You can even just speak to you more in the moment. Or
Day after day, you renew creation.
day after day, you renew
In
creation.
the first paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
And then it finishes with a powerful, for your wondrous works, for the light your fashion, the sun and the moon which reflect your glory.
Reflect your glory, yeah. Which is the middle, it's actually we're in the middle of that point, right? So we have to go through the whole next page.
The next, by the next page.
But we're not gonna get there. We're gonna get there in just a second, right? But I just wanna make the connection between, in the theme.
You know, if we, and again, I'm not sure that this was the context, but assuming that there were a lot of, there was a tendency maybe to think of gods of light and darkness and of being so enthralled by the sun and moon, that this is something that they praise. I sure mentioned it, if that was not the case, right? And we want to think about God in kind of this like infinite stamp, you know, and not just it's get away from the concept of sun and moon as gods. I sure mentioned it a lot.
Ah,
I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like it's, I don't want to say overplayed a little bit, but it seems like,
well, and I think this actually, I don't know, I mean, anyone else have an idea about why that might be?
just as an example, I mean, Game of Thrones, I don't know how many people watch that show. No one, okay. There was, there was a god of light.
It's a little too violent for me.
There was a whole religion of light that like drives a lot of the characters in the show. It's being
Yeah,
played
right.
out.
Okay.
What about Pikachu? What's that? Pikachu.
Pikachu.
Pikachu, I don't even know Pikachu, that's interesting.
They used to throw bolts of lightning.
Pokemon, oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, Pokemon. So let's look at the second page, because the first page feels like, at least to me, and tell me if you feel differently. The first page feels like nature lover. I'm going hiking, right? It's beautiful, but it's very down to earth, very like, right, grounded. So let's take a look at page 31, and just do the same thing. An easy read through the English, and if there's a sentence or phrase that kind of sings out as capturing what it's about to you, try to share that or remember that for just a minute.
The translation is very poetic.
It's not so exact.
It's not so exact. I kind of prefer
The more,
or another version.
Is
Yeah.
something you-
Yeah, like this part.
Because they-
Like this part, because it always gets me. It's when they say they're all giving each other permission and they're all putting the burden on each other to praise God. I feel like that's kind of like interesting. It always strikes me as like an interesting activity of the angels in here. Just things that they found loyalty and they hallowed. It's just like,
That's why I like the whole first.
and then it reminds me of like Kaddish where you say like, you're beyond all praise and beyond all comforting things. It's interesting. That is weird, like that. Makes a lot of sense.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. I like
But
it.
this I don't like.
Oh,
I
it's
like
like
creativity.
overly translated.
Creativity, crazy.
hmm?
So I
Well, so before we dismiss it or judge it, or let's first just make sure we are understanding. So what do you get out of it?
This is all about the heavens, supernatural.
All about the heavens, or is it something about God's spiritual environment, right?
You want to believe it's a miracle.
Hmm?
If you want to believe it's a miracle, it is.
Really into miracles.
I look at the stars and it's a miracle. I always believe.
Mhm. And so miracles, do you connect there to these this kind of spiritual realm? So why link the two? Why would the rabbis think that this makes sense to push together into one cohesive blessing that's going to begin with a blessing and end with a blessing that are on the same theme?
It's the same reason that they're putting night and darkness. They feel like there's a need to, you thinking God is just a God in the physical world, is also a metaphysical God.
Okay.
Same reason they say we need to.
Did anyone see anything different in the bottom paragraph?
Yes.
What do you see?
Once I get past the seraphim singing, I go back to, again, praising of what God has done.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the same words used.
Are you talking about the last paragraph?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you
I feel like,
To praiseworthy
I
God.
feel like he's talking now about very concrete examples of God's, how he's manifested our world, healing people, giving,
creating new life.
creating new life.
So sang the psalmist. It's about 5
Right.
lines up. Okay. Praise the creator of great lights, for God's love endures forever. And then, this is the sentence that we want to try to grapple with. Cause a new light to illumine Zion. And then we see and may we all soon merit, share a portion of its radiance. Baruch atah Hashem Yoser HaMe'orot. Praise you, Adonai, creator of lights. So, transcend this world. We're not trying to reach a salvation that's beyond the physical world. We're trying to bring salvation to this world. That's what a Jewish journey is. Not to like try to escape the world and dream of a better time, but to make this time that we have deep and enriched with a love of God's creation, the miracles of it, and to see all of that as coming from that same source. So there you go. Thank you. Thank you for your engagement in the conversation. So that's what we see, just to show you, right? That we begin with blessing the wrong book. Praised are you, Hashem, our God, who rules the universe, creating light and fashioning darkness, ordaining the order of all creation, which is also a right poetic translation. So let me read the translation that was done for the New Siddur, which is not so new anymore. They don't translate Baruch Atah Hashem into the English, right? Baruch Atah Hashem, our God, sovereign of time and space, Melech HaOlam, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. Which is much more, I wouldn't say literal, but it's much more tethered to the Hebrew, right? So that's the translation, that's pretty accurate. And then if we have that in our mind, I just want to close by reading the translation of the second blessing, right? Which is, thank the Creator of the great lights, for God's love is everlasting. Cause a new light to shine on Zion, and may we all soon be worthy of its illumination. And it's Baruch Atah Hashem, Yotzer HaMe'orah, Creator of lights. Pretty close, right? But it's a little bit more expansive in that the first one seems pretty directed at the physical world, whereas the second one, lights, and the new light can be more expansive. Let's David Mariv. And we're page 137. In the Radrish Grant.
137.
137.
137. Chayve kemte min chalenu lenam be'berchutar nemari v'ravihim Kim chayenu v'lechamenu v'gim yom v'layla v'yavatcha tasim menu le'alamim ruchata Adonai hevamo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad וכתוב רצון קיבלו עליהם משה בני ישראל לכנו שירה ושמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך בנים אדוני מי כמוך נדע בקודש תורה תהילות תוסף אלה מלכות חלב בני חבקם לפני משה זה עליינו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי יפקד אדוני את יעקב וגאל עמי החזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השכיבנו אדוני שמות ותן אבונו לחיים ושלום מעתה ולעולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני מלך לעולם ועד כי המלכות שלך עמה בדומה בכבוד כן המלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בהודות אמין מלכנו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשה יגדע ויקדש מרבה ויום דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ומכון וחי תחבר ישראל בגליו ומקריבים אמרו אמן יש מרבה מבורך לעולם ריאל מאור מאיה יתברך יברא וישתבח ויתפע ויתומה ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמלכות שבריחו לילה מקבך אתה ושירתה שבתה ורחמתה אדם מרבי עלמה ואמרו אמן page 158 פינו אדוני אתה קדוש ברוך כבוד יפתחו וחיידש שמרגלה זאת ראשך, אדוני אדוני רב דמעצי כה יגיד תורה וידיר. יגדל ויקדש מרבה, וילמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ומכון ובחי תבוא בית ישראל בעגליו זמן קריב, אמרו אמן. יהי שמרה ומבורך, ליעלם וליעלם לעולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתמר וינשא ויתעלה 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 שמי לקודשה בריחו. לילה מכל בחטא ושרתה שבועתה ונחמתה אדם ונביא עלמה ואמרו אמן. יקבל צלותנו ובאותנו לכל ישראל כאדם ובאנו בשמיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה משמע וחיים עלינו וכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום עלינו ויעשה שלום עלינו וכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Page 163. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נותן שמיים ותודה רצועה שגם שמיים ושיהיה זאת. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We recall with love and affection our yard sites for this now 16th day of the month of Adar. Abraham Burfond, Anita J. Borg, Anna Garmis, Arthur Kanarvogel, Frederick Gerson, Joan Schlesinger, Jonah Sterling, Maxwell Becker, Murray Falsenfeld, Rose Fox, and Victor Silverman. So we'll have a good opportunity now for mourners and people observing yard sites to recite the Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום עם רומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. You want to do that prayer for Israel? אבינו
שמיים צבו ישראל וגואלו, ברך למדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחה גאולתנו. הגן עליה בעברת חסדך, פרוס עליה סוכת שלומך, ושלח אורך ואמיתה לראשיה, שריה ויועציה. ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך, חזק ידי מגן ארץ קודשנו, ותקנם אלוהינו ישועה, ועטר ניצחון תעטרה. ונתת שלום בארץ, וזכרת עולם ביושביה, ונאמר אמן. Lord balevav penihima, nefesh yehudi chomiya, ulfateh mizra kadima, ein letzion sofiya. Od lo avna tikvateinu, atikva vashnot alpahayim, Lihiotam Hoshi Be'artzeinu Eretz Sion Yerushalayim. Lihiotam Hoshi Be'artzeinu Eretz Sion Yerushalayim. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen yalalai lai la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei b'nei v'samim Mine besamim ya la 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 ya la 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 ya ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam me'orei ha'esh borei me'orei ha'esh Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamabdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech Ben Yisrael le'amim ben yom ha'shevi'i l'sheshet yemei ha'maaseh Baruch atah Adonai Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Yalalai Bam 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 Shavuatov 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 Thank you, Marcia.
6:30 tomorrow night?
Sunday, 9 in the morning.